Tēnā koutou, no mai, haere mai. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Walking the Shadowlands podcast. Let me be your guide as we take a walk into the realms of the unexplained, of the paranormal, of things that go bump in the night and haunt your dreams.
Your hosts?
I'm Marianne. Thanks so much for joining me today, tonight, whatever time it is, wherever you're living in this beautiful world of ours. Sit back, relax, and let me be your guide as we walk into the Shadowlands together and see what awaits us there. Hello everyone, welcome back. A special welcome to all our new listeners this year. I hope that you all had a safe and comfortable holiday season, especially for those of you in the world whose holiday was disrupted by this pandemic. Also, welcome to 2021. Let's see how this year pans out for us all, eh? I lived in the States for some years in North Carolina. To be precise, a lovely small town called Waxhaw, just out of Charlotte. I did a bit of movie extra work while I was there, and one time I went to Georgia for an audition. Whilst I was there, I decided to go on one of the ghost tours because I wanted to learn a bit more about the history of the area I was currently in, not because I expected to see anything paranormal. I was really impressed with the tour guide, who was particularly interesting to listen to, and he told the stories in such an entertaining manner that I was thoroughly spellbound. When I got the chance after the tour had ended, I asked him if he had actually had any paranormal experiences on his tours, or if any of his guests actually had. It was no surprise when he told me of a couple of experiences. I can't remember the precise details now, but that tour stuck with me. And I've always thought it would be a great thing to actually be able to sit down and talk to someone who does these tours. And finally, I got the opportunity to do so with this episode's special guest. However, the question for you, as always, is, are you willing to walk with me into this part of the Shadowlands and see what awaits us there? Before we do, sit back, relax with your favourite hot or cold drink and your knee rug. This is going to be quite a journey. You might want to leave the lights on for this one. Then let's begin. Denny O'Rourke, the host of the paranormal podcast Hauntingly Yours, is a lifelong enthusiast of the paranormal from the time his grandfather appeared to him in a dream with a special message at 13 years old until now. It's been eye-opening and insightful. It's left him wanting more though. What is on the other side for us after death? Today, Denny, in addition to being a podcaster, is also a professional ghost tour guide, a ghost storyteller and paranormal investigator. He's a lover of history and finds himself aiming to keep the haunted locales and their stories alive. My special guest, Denny O'Rourke. we first made contact, I was quite excited to hear about your experiences and things that you've encountered in your life's journey in this area.
Oh,
So
yes.
maybe we could start by you telling us how you came to, well, one, to be a tour guide for a start. That's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, so I went to work for an outdoor living history museum where I live in Virginia called Colonial Williamsburg. And it's the largest outdoor living history museum in the United States, just over 300 acres. It's a representation of the way Williamsburg looked when it was the capital of the colony of Virginia during the 18th century.
Right.
I found myself working there as a gardener, interpreting gardening history from the time period. And the opportunity to become a ghost tour guide came up. And I said, well, I'm an investigator, I've been chasing after the paranormal my whole life. Why not? And I went out, they had me perform a story for them, and they offered me the job the next day. And I ended up working for them for about 5 years as a ghost tour guide, storyteller. And then I left them. They decided to merge my program with another program and create a new program that I didn't agree with. And I ended up finding a new home, and I've been working with them. Let's see, I guess the better part of 6, 7 months now.
Oh, great.
Oh, yeah.
And I know when I lived in the States, I lived in North Carolina for a number of years, and I visited, where was it? Atlanta,
Okay,
Georgia, and I
sure.
went on a ghost walk there, and
Mhm.
I really enjoyed the history and the storytelling of the person who gave the tours. So in order to do something like that, you have to be a pretty good storyteller, to be able to keep people, what's the word,
Interest.
involved. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's 100% right. And I can tell you from experience, if I ever feel like somebody's not into it, I have to think creatively and figure out a way to pull those people in. Um, haven't had any complaints so far. So
Oh, that's good. So you have to really be a natural storyteller. You have to be part actor to be able
hmm
to get the people involved and interested. And you have to be able to
absolutely.
think on your feet and outside the box, I would say.
Very much so. Yes. And thankfully I do have, I mean, my background is theater, and, I've also done film and television. So it definitely comes in handy.
I was going to say you have to have some sort of background like that to be
Yeah,
able to really dramatize and bring these stories to life. Uh,
most definitely.
yeah, absolutely. So maybe we could go back a little bit and maybe you could tell us how you became involved in the paranormal to begin with. What set you off on this journey?
Well, we're going way back here. When I was 13, I'm 33 now, by the way. When I was 13, my grandfather passed away. Actually, he died 2 days before my 13th birthday. And I remember I was very devastated by this because he and I were very close. 2 days after we buried him, I awoke in a dream where I was in this white room with very bright lights, and I'm looking all around because it didn't feel like a dream,
Right.
but I knew I was asleep. And I remember looking all around this place thinking, okay, where am I? And the room just seems like it goes on forever. And I start walking along, and then I hear a voice call out to me, and I recognized it. So I kept moving closer and closer, and I realized it was my grandfather, and he was sitting all the way at the other end of this room. And I hurried over to him, and he's sitting on this white throne, and he's wearing a white suit, and he looks as good as he ever has. And I said, Papa, what are you doing here? He said, don't worry about that. I never got the chance to tell you goodbye. I just wanted to tell you I love you and I hope you have a good life.
Oh.
And then I woke up and I was, crying my eyes out naturally, but I couldn't figure out what just happened.
Mm,
I said, was that him or was that a dream?
mm.
I went around and I told everyone, my mom, my stepdad, the local reverend at our church, and everybody just said, you're a 13-year-old boy grieving the loss of a family member.
Right.
You know, it's your mind playing tricks on you. But I knew there was something more to it. And that wasn't the only time something like that has happened to me. It's been happening over the course of my life
Right.
where people I'm close to or have some kind of connection with, they somehow reach out to me and give me a message.
Right.
But that kind of put me on the path.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's been spread out quite vastly over the course of my life. Back in, I think it was July of 2007, I had an experience that I guess truly set me down the path that I'm on now. That really, grounded my feet in the paranormal field, and I've been looking for answers ever since. I grew up in the second smallest county in Virginia, called Matthews County.
Right.
And about 10 minutes from my house, there is this place called Old House Woods. Now, Old House Woods, the best way I can describe it is it's the stuff all good legends are made of. It's,
Right.
a 60-acre creepy patch of woods. It's haunted by pirates and witches and soldiers from the Revolutionary War. I mean, the list is probably 10 miles long of, hauntings.
Right.
And I had a friend one night who asked me if I wanted to go ghost hunting. Now, I had never done that at all. Here I am, 19 years old, and I'm thinking, I watch all these shows on TV like Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters, and I said, yeah, you know what? I mean, I'm interested in the paranormal. I've had a few things happen. Why not? He and I, we clock out of work late one night at this little cafe we're working at, and we take a drive out to the woods. We drive down, the center of the woods through the dirt road, and I'm looking all around. It's just after midnight. It's absolutely spooky out. We get to the end, and I see, a no trespassing sign. And I went, hold on, whoa, whoa, whoa. And he said, oh, no, no, don't worry, don't worry. We're not trespassing on anybody's property. We're just going to turn around and come back out. And I said, okay. And we got to the end, we turned around. Then he pulled over to the side of the road once we were in the middle of the woods. And we got out, and he ended up sitting on the ground and told me he was going to astral project. And I said, okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about. And he sat there and got in this like meditative like stance and, was humming and trying to astral project, which I didn't think he was doing a very good job at. And all the while I'm looking around and I'm keeping an eye on the woods and, because I have no idea what to expect.
Right.
It's like we're pretty much in the marshlands, swamp everywhere. There's swamps everywhere, really tall pine trees that, if the wind blows, they kind of like slam up against each other and make horrible sounds.
Right.
You hear like frogs in the distance. It definitely added to the ambiance of what we were doing. But I'm sitting here looking around, and after 10 minutes, I encounter something. I hear what sounds like somebody moving through the woods about several yards to my right. And I look over, adjusting my eyes, and I can clearly see the trees being pushed back and forth as somebody's moving through the woods. And then I hear the footsteps and I hear twigs snapping. And then I'm thinking, okay, somebody's in the woods.
Right.
Well, next thing I know, somebody physically comes out of the woods. It's the shadow figure, and he dissipates into this best way I can describe it is this black vapor, just this giant cloud. He kind of sails out of the woods over the ditch bank and comes down to the road, and then dissipates again, and he's this full-on apparition of a man
Wow.
with a horn hat, and he's wearing a long flowing overcoat. I mean, he looks, if I had to guess, he looked like he was from the 17th century. Very much a pirate. I know enough about history.
Yeah.
I've seen enough movies. I knew it was a pirate, and I mean, I was speechless. This is like something out of a horror movie that I'm witnessing. And I look over at my friend who's not paying attention, and I said, "Charles, get up now." And I took off running to the car. I didn't look back. I jumped in the back seat, and I look out the window, and I see this pirate running after my friend, chasing him.
Wow.
And my friend screamed his head off the entire way, but right as he got up to the car, the pirate grabbed a hold of him, threw him up against the car, and they started struggling. I mean, there was a fight going on, and my friend's begging me, "Denny, help me, Denny, help me." And I'm like, man, this is out of my league. I have no idea what's going on here, what you've gotten me into, but I'm not messing with this entity. No way, no how. And all of a sudden, like, I see him throw a punch, and then he manages to escape, gets in the car, and we drive off. I mean, I've never seen him drive that fast in all my life. But the last thing I remember seeing, I turned around and looked out the back window of the car, and this man was running toward us, this pirate. He was running toward the car, and he was glowing. He was like this blue color. And I guess he gave up because he stopped. And then 6 more guys dressed as pirates showed up behind him.
Whoa. See, you guys must have been just about peeing your pants.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, to this day, I mean, it still blows my mind every time I take that trip down memory lane. I
Yeah.
mean, just, I feel like I had an experience that most people want and never get. You know what I mean? And I keep going and looking for those types of experiences.
Well, you would. I guess one is verification for what you experience because it's not very often that you have spirit physically interacting
Exactly.
on that
Yeah.
level. Actually, very rare. So
Right.
for you to see that on your first encounter is pretty radical, really.
Yeah. And I mean, the only way I can really wrap my mind around it is this entity, the spirit, he must have been laying in wait
Mm.
for a very long time, building up the energy to physically, manipulate and touch, another human being. I mean, what else is there? I mean, unless you want to go down the demon rabbit hole, but even then, no, I don't think so.
No, no. I'm
No.
not a believer in demons. I mean, I've been a medium my entire life, and
Mhm.
I've seen some very nasty human spirit, and I've seen some interdimensional beings, but demonic is a religious terminology used to create fear. And certainly interdimensional beings can give off an energy that creates fear in us because it's a totally different energy to what we're
Sure.
used to. Doesn't mean that equal, it just means the energy is quite vastly different to ours.
Oh,
But
sure.
yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. That would have been, and certainly, I mean, I've had spirit physically touch me, never
Mm.
hit me, but touch me as in comfort touches, and many people have. But to see that, how did your friend deal with it?
He was pretty exasperated. I mean, he could barely talk.
Yeah,
And I just kept going, "What was that? What was that?" And he's like, "No, no, no, not right now, not right now. I can't do it. Let's go, let's go." I mean, he had been ghost hunting long before I had.
right.
But I mean, actually, I did an interview recently, and I told the story, of course, and he saw the interview and basically said, "Is this the story that I'm thinking of?" Because I remember just how fast I drove trying to get out of the woods that night.
Wow.
So he
Yeah.
remembers it very well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's pretty traumatic. So, your mind tends to glaze over traumatic things so they're not so hard for you to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
There was something else in there that I was going to say, and I can't remember what it was. Oh, gosh, I hate that. It'll probably come back to me. So, oh, that's right. So the spirit that was there, he obviously had a lot of anger and control issues,
Oh yeah, I'd say so.
and he obviously felt like you were being disrespectful, or
Hmm.
maybe he was still guarding his treasure. Who knows?
Yeah, and that's an interesting thought because one of the many legends of the place is that the infamous pirate Blackbeard
Blackbeard.
actually came ashore White's Creek, which runs along the woods, and he took about a dozen men in and buried some treasure and then killed them all so their
Oh,
spirits would protect the treasure. Dead men tell no tales and all
right,
that.
right.
And then he got back on his ship, sailed, further down the coast to North Carolina and met Lieutenant Maynard and unfortunately met his ultimate demise.
That's really interesting. So that could explain, maybe that wasn't such a legend after all. Maybe he actually did that, and that would explain the group of men coming up behind and the anger of that particular person.
Yeah, yeah.
Who
Makes
knows?
sense to me.
Interesting
Yeah.
thought, food for thought, though, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I've had multiple experiences in those woods, and I've had other run-ins with pirates. Actually, there was one night where we actually, me and some friends got permission to spend the night in the woods. And I was actually filming a small documentary, about my experiences and the history and everything. And I remember we were all gathered around our campfire. We were eating some stew, and everybody was like, "Oh, you know what? Leave the rest for tomorrow. That'll be a good lunch." And I said, "Okay." Left the ladle in the pot at the campfire. Everybody turned in for the night, and as I was falling asleep, I saw these seven figures moving toward camp, and they were glowing this blue color. Blue color.
Mhm.
I saw six tall figures that were clearly adults, and then I saw a shorter one in front, which I assumed was a child. And I'm looking, here I am on my pillow, looking out the tent, and I'm thinking, I'm tired. My eyes are playing tricks on me.
Right.
Well, I wake up the next day, and one of my friends who was with me, he was visiting from Nepal, and we woke up. I think it was like 7 o'clock in the morning. We're all very groggy, and he says, "Guys, I had this strange dream where I awoke in the tent to hearing this terrible racket outside in camp." Well, I got up, I went to investigate, and when I came out, there were these seven people gathered around the campfire eating our beef stew. There were six men, they were dressed like they were from another time period and had funny looking hats, and there was a little girl in a white dress that was kind of raggedy looking. They were sitting there eating our beef stew, and I yelled at them. I said, "Hey, that's our stew." They turned and looked at me, and they started laughing, and the little girl took the ladle and chunked it at me. And everybody just started laughing at him. Nobody believed it at all. But
Right.
me, I went, hold on. I took what I saw and I took his dream and I put the two together and I looked at him and I said, "Tenson, where's that ladle?" And because I had looked down in the pot and it wasn't there. And he said, "Well, in the dream, she threw it," and he pointed, and there it was on the other side of camp.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And
Wow, that's pretty freaky.
right. Yeah. So, I mean, the other guys thought, it was just him being silly, but
Yeah.
they were, once they saw the ladle on the ground, they just went, "Okay, nope, nope."
Don't want to know about this, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that would be a normal reaction, wouldn't it? Wow, how
Yeah.
so that was pretty much a shared experience that validated what you had seen, and it validated for Tenzing, is it? Did you say
Tenson. Yeah.
Tenzing?
Hmm.
Yeah, it validated for him what he had experienced as well.
Right.
How cool is
Absolutely.
that?
I
Wow.
know.
So that got you, so that really put you on a lifelong journey into the fields of the paranormal and the unexplained.
Oh, yes, very much so, without a doubt.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you started working with the tours. And tell us, what sort of things have you experienced as a tour guide?
Well, first one that comes to mind is it was September 3rd, 2016. I was doing a tour. It was my second tour of the night. In those days, I did two. I did one at 7 o'clock and one at 8:30. And it was a Saturday night. I remember I had about 45 people,
Mm,
and yeah, big group.
mm,
And we're marching, all around the historic area. And I've been taking them to all the historic houses, telling them about the history and the spooky stories. And I get to this one shop. It's called the Prentice Shop. It's just, a retail store. They actually sell handcrafted items made by the local tradesmen who work there in the historic area for the
right.
museum. And I stop at this shop and, I'm telling everybody about the history and, I'm saying, hey, this is an original building built in 1739. This is who it's named after. And then I tell them about the spooky happenings, because people have been saying the place is haunted for years. And I get to the end of it and I start joking with these little kids, these children that are sitting around my feet. And I say, kids, look, I know what you're thinking. You would like to say something bad about this shop, and I don't recommend it, okay? Because Mr. Prentice, the man whom the shop is named after, he's still here lurking in the shadows. He's waiting for some smart aleck kid like you to try their luck. And, everybody started laughing. I was just joking around, trying to have a
Right.
bit of fun. And one of them gets up. He's like 10 years old. He looks at both of the windows on the side of the building where I'm standing. And he says as loud as he possibly can, Mr. Prentice, are you here? I think your store is stupid. And he spits on the ground. I said, oh, somebody's a tough guy. Okay. We don't provoke ghosts, young man. And he laughed. He thought it was the funniest thing in the world. But then it was like he did a 360. He went completely white, and then he took off running to the back of the group. And I look back. He's holding on to his mom for dear life, pulling on her arm. Mom, help me, help me. She's like, what, sweetie? What's wrong? He points at the shop window that I happen to be standing under. And she looks at the window. She goes completely white and she has no words all of a sudden. And everybody else who's all around us, they were laughing. They just went completely silent and they looked at the window and they had no words. Everybody was completely and totally mortified at something that was in that window. And I looked at everyone and I said, guys, what's going on? Why did all of you just become silent as the grave? And then a gentleman at the back of the group, he yelled out to me, and I look back. He's an elderly man, white hair. He's got a New York Yankees hat on. He's got a camera around his neck. And I said, sir, what's wrong? And he said, Denny, should anybody be inside this shop right now? I said, no, sir. Why? He said, I'm pretty sure there's a man sitting in the window right now. There's a really bright light on. You can't miss it. And I looked at everybody else because I thought the guy was messing with me,
Right.
trying to have a bit of fun. So I said, guys, is he telling the truth? And they were like, yeah, you want to turn around and look in the window. So I took a couple of steps out and I looked in that window. And what I should have seen, by the way, was a black curtain that's literally nailed to the windowsill. It's there to help maintain a 18th century look about the
Right.
building. They don't want people to look in and see a laptop or a fax machine or something modern, throws you for a loop. And I'm looking at it, this window, and the curtain's not there. It's gone. It's like somebody's just ripped it off the window. And instead, there's a bright light on inside the store. And there's a man sitting there in a chair. Quite plainly, we can all see him sitting there like he's at a desk, doing something. And we're looking at his profile. You can see his ears, you can see his neck. You could tell he had long brown hair, which is pulled back. and he was wearing an 18th century outfit, very prominent collar, and you could see the chair he was sitting in. Now everybody's begging me, Denny, what is this? What's going on? And I'm like, oh, hold on, guys, let me find out. I walk up to the window. I knock on the sill, trying to create a little noise. I say, hey, pal, I'm sorry to bother you up there. My name's Denny. I work for the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. Do you mind telling me who you are? I just finished a tour out here, and I'm terribly sorry, but all of my guests are absolutely petrified. Who are you? And a few seconds later, I got a response because he moved back in his chair. He got up and he turned around to face me. And I got one good look at him because he came in real slow. He bent over, he put one hand on each of his knees, and he kind of leveled his head with mine and just stared me right in the face. And what I could clearly see was a middle-aged man, probably in his mid-40s, long brown hair, brown eyes. He had some facial hair coming in, and he was dressed as an 18th century merchant. Now, I know he was a merchant based off the type of attire that he was wearing. Not only that, I was a merchant for the historic museum at one point myself, so guilty as charged. But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking the tailoring is way too good. This guy has to make his own costumes. But I cast that aside and I waited for the response, and I could tell this guy was, ticked off.
Mm.
But I never got a response other than him getting up and looking at me, because the light in the store blinked off. He was gone, and then the black curtain reappeared like the whole thing never happened.
Whoa.
Yeah, pretty much I turned around to try and tell my group what I thought happened, and my group had taken off running. they were going every which way, and I basically said, all right, guys, have a good night. And I got back to my manager's office to tell him what happened, and the gentleman who asked me, to look in the window, he followed me the entire way, and he said, Denny, I just wanted to tell you that I was taking photos from the moment the guy appeared in the window, and I just wanted you to have one of the photos. And I went, wow. Yeah, and I mean, I've had it on my phone ever since that day, September 3rd, 2016. I tell that story every night at work.
Wow.
But if you look
Oh my goodness.
a little bit, yeah, I'm trying to show it to you as best as I can.
Can you send me a copy of that? And I'll put it on this episode's, like on my website. I have a page for each episode where I put a fully written transcript for deaf people, and I
Oh,
would really like to put that image with it.
sure. Yeah,
That would
absolutely. I
be
can do
so
that.
awesome. Oh
Yeah,
my,
fantastic.
to have it. Oh wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's been by far my best experience. But I've had multiple. I've had multiple experiences. There's one house there. They consider it the most haunted house in the city, and it's called the Peyton Randolph House. And the spirits there literally know me by name.
Right.
Whenever I go there, and if I turn on the spirit box, which is a perk of coming on my tour, because it's an extreme tour.
Right.
I carry paranormal equipment, but if I turn on the spirit box, they start talking to me without me saying, "Hey, it's Denny." No, I turn it on. Denny, hi, Denny, hey, Denny. And I'm like, all right, hey guys, yes, it's me. I know you like me.
That's so cool. That's so
Yeah.
cool. I've had similar experiences. I used to nurse, I live in a small town in New Zealand called Napier. And
Hmm.
I started my training as a hospital-based training on a Napier Hill, which is like a huge hill in town. And
Yeah.
there's the old original Napier Cemetery is right by the nurses' home where I used to live.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
in the days back in the 70s when I started my training,
Huh?
nurses in New Zealand had to live in the nurses' home. That was the
Uh,
regulation. Very
mhm.
British, not like it is at all in America. And
Sure.
I used to go over to the cemetery all the time and visit and just sit there because I enjoyed the energies. It was quiet and it was peaceful. And the spirit there knew me. And I had been away for about 20 years, and I came back to Napier, and I went for a visit, and I had my recorder, and I got, oh, Marianne's back. Marianne's back.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Of course,
cool.
of course, there's no time in spirit.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
spirit are just humans that no longer have this physical body, so they have the same emotions and feelings that they had when they were here. So of
Hmm.
course they would have built a bond up with you, especially if you're going there all the time and you're respectful.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly right. Exactly right. And I know when I first started doing tours, for the current company I'm with, the spirits at this house, I think they got aggravated with me asking the same questions every night that I came. And I'm just thinking, guys, you don't understand. I'm doing a job here. I'm giving different groups of people each night a performance. And unfortunately, yes, you are part of the performance. If you feel so inclined to come out and chat,
Yeah.
it's like, I would say, are there any men here with us tonight? You've asked this already. It's like, okay, why do you linger at this place? We've been over this. I'm like, okay. So I learned to adapt very quickly because I wanted to keep that friendly rapport with them.
Right.
So instead of coming there and just asking a billion questions, I would just come there and start a conversation. Hey everyone, it's Denny. I hope everybody's doing all right tonight. How's it going? And try to get them to come out slowly but surely. And it seems like every time I go to that one house, there's always someone different there. There on record, there have been over 30 plus deaths in the house.
Wow.
Yeah, and there is a cemetery on the property that no one's ever found with one of the former families that lived there in the 19th century. And I had a conversation with a spirit one night who told me his name was Michael. This was actually about 2 weeks ago. And I said, well, Michael, I'm curious. Can you tell me how many people are in the house right now? He said 27. And I was kind of baffled. That just went, whoa, that's a number out of left field. I mean, okay. I said, are you sure? He said, yes. And I said, are you part of the Randolph family? And he said, maybe. And I said, somebody's feeling persnickety.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, doesn't want to reveal who he is, but I went and looked it up because I'm very familiar with the house, but I won't pretend to know everything. I did find out that the Randolph family who the house is named after, they had 27 slaves when they lived in that house.
Wow.
So I thought, oh, what if Michael is an enslaved person?
Right.
Yeah. I just, coincidence? Sure, you can say that, but either that or somebody's privy to some information.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Hmm.
Now, I was looking up, doing a bit of research on you,
Hmm.
and I read that the most scary incident you've ever experienced was in the Horn Harbour nursing home.
Oh. Yes, I actually just talked about that last night for a virtual podcast summit that's going on right now.
Oh,
Called
okay.
Indie Pods United. Yeah, a bunch of my friends got together and decided to put that little shindig together. Yeah, but I talked about that. That was a big trip down memory lane. So pretty much after I became familiar with Old House Woods, I decided I needed to branch out, and I started looking for other places in my hometown. And one commonly talked about place pretty much from the time I was born was Horn Harbor Nursing Home. Everybody talked about it. It
Right.
was this great nursing home. It was government run from 1943 up until about 1977. A lady named Ethel Owens operated it, ran it. She worked there for about 25 years.
Wow.
And then when the patients got transferred, she unfortunately became ill and ended up becoming a patient herself at the new nursing home, Riverside Convalescent Center.
Right.
And then from there, it turned into a home for troubled boys from Denmark. And these boys, they were just total delinquents. They were always getting into trouble, getting arrested. They were doing witchcraft and trying to, resurrect spirits and all sorts of crazy things.
Right.
And there's a lot of speculation that it's because of them that the building became haunted, that they unleashed something that they had no idea, would actually come about. They actually had a room in the facility called the Devil's Room, where they would carry out this black magic. And up until the building was demolished back in 2014, if you ventured in there, you could see the Devil's Room. I mean, this heavy steel door, it's got a red pentagram on it, and, it says the Devil's Room, and you go in, and it just smells like death.
Right.
Absolutely creepy place. But I've had multiple experiences in there, and the scariest, most spooky experience I had, it was late one night. My friend Charles, who took me to Old House Woods for the very first time and introduced me to ghost hunting. It was me, him, and another friend named Michael, who was the skeptic out of us. And we went into the facility, and we're walking around. It was probably like 2:00 in the morning. It was incredibly late. And I remember we were standing in the kitchen, and the kitchen is absolutely massive kitchen. And, it's, of course, long since been cleared out. There's this oven that's in the middle of the room. That's about it. And the oven's seen better days. It's rusted, it's falling apart. It's, I think, on 2 legs. And there's a pantry off in the corner. And then on the far side of the room, there's a door that you can take to go outside to the courtyard. Then where I was standing, which I was in front of the oven, just on the other side of the oven, there are 2 windows, and those windows were both broken. There was glass on the floor. And we're standing around in here, and I'm looking at the moon coming in through the windows. And I said, is there anyone there? If someone's there, could you please give us a sign to acknowledge your presence? Doing the typical paranormal investigator thing. And all of a sudden, I hear what sounds like 2 little boys laughing. And I'm looking all around. My friends are looking around. And then I tabbed them because I pinpointed where it was coming from. And I pointed straight ahead without saying anything. And we all start looking at the 2 windows in front of me. And sure enough, there are 2 silhouettes that look like young boys. And they've got their hands over their eyes, like they're peeking in at us, having a laugh.
Right.
And my friend Michael, who's the skeptic, he's like, all right, we know you're out there. You need to stop messing around and come on in. I'll mess you up. Okay. And one of them walked right through the window. And all I saw was the silhouette of this boy come in through the window. And I knew he was there because the broken glass under the windowsill on the floor started crunching. And I said, oh, he's actually there. And then the other silhouette ran down the length of the building, came in the door, and ran all the way up to my friend. And my friend just went, my hand's going cold. I mean, it's ice cold. And then he said, oh, I feel fingers. Fingers, like they're locking around my fingers. And it was from pretty much that point on, him and Charles took off running to the car, and they left me standing there. To put it quite plainly, left me standing there to hang out with the 2 shadow boys. And I just thought, oh, why is this always the case? I mean, but I ended up leaving, and Charles, and we took Michael home, dropped him off, and then Charles took me back to my place. And I got out of the car, and I felt like somebody got out of the car with me. And I looked up at the house, and I see the shadow of a person run up toward the front door. And I looked down at Charles. He said, bye, Denny, have a good night. And he took off because he saw it too. And to make a long story very short, over the next 2 weeks, I was pretty much harassed by the entity of a young boy who I guess was probably 11 or 12 years old. I would wake up in the middle of the night to somebody knocking on my bedroom window, and I'd get up, look outside, there's no one there. I'd go outside and walk around the house, there's no one. But I felt like I was being watched. That's the only way to put it. I'm looking all around, I could feel it, but there's no one there.
Yeah.
And there would be random noises, like inside my closet, and I hear footsteps going down the hall. And then I remember one day I was going to take a shower, and I saw what looked like the shadow of a person out the corner of my eye go into my bedroom. And I had this pet rabbit at the time. And I go into the shower, start the shower, and I hear my rabbit screaming its head off. I run back into the room, and my rabbit's levitating in midair, like somebody's wringing his neck. And then he just drops dead. And I was just like, okay, what just happened? I was upset. I took the rabbit, I buried him. And the next morning, I remember I woke up in a dream, and there's this strange 12-year-old boy that I've never seen standing at the foot of my bed. He's dressed like he's from the 1970s, maybe 1980s. I couldn't really tell. And he's standing there at the foot of my bed with my dead rabbit's bag of food, and he's pouring it all over my feet, laughing hysterically. And I said, "Hey, who are you?" And then I woke up. And when I woke up, I looked down at my feet and saw the bag of rabbit food levitating in midair, and then it just dropped onto the bed. And I said, no. I said aloud to an empty room, I said, "Whoever you are, you're going home. You don't belong here. Obviously, you attached yourself. That's fine, but it's time you go back. I've had enough." And I got a couple of people together. I brought all my equipment with me because I built quite the arsenal at this point.
Right.
And, I went with my digital voice recorder, and I invited him to come back. And we pulled into the driveway of the place. And it was just after midnight. Got out of the car. I took all my equipment. I turned on my digital voice recorder. And all of a sudden, I felt somebody get out the car with me that wasn't in the back seat. And I looked behind me, and I said to my friends, "Did you feel that?" And they're like, "Yeah, somebody got out of the car." And then we saw the shadow of a person dart behind the bushes that were near us. And I said, "It's him. It's him. He's run over there." And I quickly run around the corner. I've got all my equipment out and recording this. And when I get behind the bushes, I see what looks like these two clouds of like white mist just lingering there, and they're kind of moving back and forth around one another. And me and my friends can hear what sounds like the laughter of two boys laughing quite clearly, quite plainly. And then one of them says, "Thank you, Denny." And then it was from there on, we were like, "Okay, we got what we came for. He's back. Let's go."
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty, wow. I think you handled that really well. And I guess you learned from there on to tell entities that they can't follow you home.
Yes, I make that a point every single time I go, do an investigation, or if I even do a tour, because I know,
Very smart.
doing tours, there are some of them that like to follow me around. I actually had an attachment for probably about 3 weeks. I had a 22-year-old male spirit named Jake. I knew what house he was from, but he would follow me all around. And I had 2 psychics tell me that he was my protector. And I said, "Okay, that's fine." So whenever I went to his house, I would say, "Jake, if you're here, you're welcome to follow me." And I would hear, "Okay, thanks." And he actually would try to introduce me to other spirits, weirdly enough. And then one night, there was a female spirit named Anna, who I'm detecting was German, but she said, Jake, trouble. And I said, Jake's in trouble. And she said, yes. And I said, where is he? She said, on the ground. And out the corner of my eye, I'm seeing what looks like this like fog, near me, that's just kind of hovering above the ground. And I said, he's near me? She said, yes. And I said, what's wrong? She said, thirsty, water. And I said, well, I have a container of water. If all he needs is water, he can help himself. Of course, I'm unsure what exactly this means.
Right.
And then all I hear is, thank you. And I never heard from him anymore after that.
Interesting.
Yeah, no idea.
And
No.
how does this interaction, obviously you have abilities or you wouldn't be having so much interaction with spirit.
Yeah, and I've always considered myself very open, to the paranormal, very sensitive. I actually did a Reiki healing for the first time back in September, and the Reiki master actually told me that I am clairvoyant.
That's what I got too.
Yeah, and she specifically said, you've been pretty much denying this your entire life. You predict things before they happen. You feel things. And I said, yeah. And she said, accept it, embrace it. It's part of who you are. And she told me that my third eye was closed, which, she couldn't quite figure out given what I do. And she opened it for me. And I kid you not, ever since then, it's made me even more of a magnet for, spirits everywhere I go. It's like I actually work at a nursing home for day work, and I actually was putting up calendars in our empty unit yesterday. And I was in this one room, and I felt like somebody ran up behind me, and I went, oh, great, here we go. And I turned around, there was nobody there in the room with me. But I could feel it. There was this very heavy presence. And I took out my cell phone really quick, and I hit the video, and I turned on the flash. And sure enough, there was an orb right there floating around. I thought it was a lens flare at first. And then I realized it was an orb because he started moving all around me. And, I just went through and I asked a series of questions. And I specifically said that I wanted him or her to know that I was protected. I was surrounded by white light, and they were welcome to be friends with me, but they must have good intentions. And I went back and I listened to this, and right after I said that, I got an EVP saying, yes. So I said, okay, got my point across.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant.
Even though they're no longer with us, they're still people.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's one thing I always stress when I do tours, and I'm pulling out all this equipment and getting spirits to interact. I always tell people, be respectful. They're not circus monkeys. They're here to talk with us just like we're here to talk with them.
Absolutely.
And give them a choice.
Yeah. Choice always, and that's a really wonderful, respectful attitude, and I feel that's why you tend to have so much success with interacting with spirits, because you do treat them with respect. You do treat them like they're regular people, which they are. They're just regular people without these vessels we carry around.
Yeah exactly. Yeah.
From all your experiences, then what made you decide? You have a podcast. Tell us a little bit about your podcast.
So pretty much back in March of this year, 2020, I took a ghost tour guide class for the current company I work for, the original Ghosts of Williamsburg. And they were like, okay, great. Denny's the star of the class because I was literally the only one coming in with prior experience.
Right.
And I'm pretty much a walking history book of not only history, but ghost stories of the area as well. And they were asking me, okay, how soon do you want to start working? These guys, they're new. It's going to take a little while. they wanted to put me to work the very next week, which I was very excited for. But then the coronavirus pandemic hit,
Oh,
and
right, of course.
all of a sudden, oh, wait, we can't do tours. And then I found myself sitting around for a few months, and I was going, I want to keep my storytelling skill set sharp.
Right.
I can tell stories to anybody I want anytime, but I'd rather be telling those stories that are near and dear to my heart. So I decided I'll start a podcast. And, I put a couple of feelers out, and people were like, yeah, I'll listen. Sure, go for it. And I came across Anchor and went to town. And I started off, nice and easy. I talked about Old House Woods and, the stories of that place that I grew up with. And then, of course, my own experiences. And then ventured one town over to where I live now, called Gloucester. Picked a place from there and talked about it. And then over time, I said, I should go outside the United States and just tell ghost stories from all across the world. So I started finding places of historic value, researching them until I was blue in the face, and digging up as much as I could, compiling it into like a 30-minute to an hour segment, and talking about the history, the folklore, and any ghost stories behind that location. And I ended up doing 13 seasons, excuse me. I ended up doing 13 episodes for my first season. Currently in the middle of a break while I'm gearing up for season 2, which I'm very excited for.
How exciting. Yeah, that's really awesome. And I know how much work goes into, I suspect, I have a feeling that you research like I do. I like, if I'm doing a subject like one of the episodes I did in my first season, I'm currently in a break at the moment between my 5th and my 6th season.
Okay.
And in my first season, I did an episode called A Glitch in the Matrix, a Holographic Reality. And I did over 30 hours research for that episode. It was like writing a mini thesis.
Sure.
Got all the theoretical physicists I could find on the subject. I researched them, and I suspect that you work in the same way.
Absolutely. I essentially take what I do for, tours, where I go into a location and I dig up the history, I dig up what happened, and then I figure out how to kind of compile it, shorten it, and present it in a timely fashion.
Right.
Yeah. But I definitely jump into it with both feet.
Right. And what's your podcast called?
My podcast is called Hauntingly Yours, podcast for the paranormal. Yeah.
Brilliant. Hauntingly Yours, a podcast for the paranormal.
Yes. It's probably much easier to just say Hauntingly Yours, but and I decided, at the very beginning, because my main objective with my podcast is to keep stories alive and can keep people telling them. I tell you the story, you turn around and you tell your friend, and your friend tells your mom, and so on and so forth down the line. And I called it a podcast for the paranormal because it's dedicated to the spirits. I'm not just doing this for my own gain. I'm doing this because I'm trying to keep their stories alive, keep their memory going.
That's really cool. That's actually a really nice way to look at it, Denny. It's a really nice thing. So give us your social media. So how can people contact you? They can hear your podcast. Are you on most podcasting apps? Like, I know you're on Anchor. Are you on Apple and iTunes?
Yeah. So I'm on all the major platforms. Right now I've been using a link tree just because it kind of compiles all the links into one space. And I mean, I'm on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Castbox, Stitcher, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. The list just goes on from there.
So pretty all of them. And you're on Instagram. What's your Instagram handle?
Hauntingly Yours Podcast.
Hauntingly Yours. Are you on Twitter?
Twitter as well. Yeah.
Hauntingly
HY Podcast FM.
Okay. Brilliant. And I'll have links to all your social media on this episode's page on the podcast website, www.walkingtheshadowlands.com. Do you have a podcast website or just a Facebook page at this point in time?
Just a Facebook page at this point in time.
So is your Facebook page the same name as your podcast?
So it's going to be the same name as you can find it under the same name as the Instagram, Hauntily Yours podcast.
Okay, brilliant. So there you go. And have you started writing a book yet?
That is in the works. Yes. Yeah. My one of my objectives is to essentially take all the places that I talk about in each season, sit down, expand upon the history, get more stories and more pictures, and just before I knew it, created a compendium of haunted places throughout the world.
That's great. I actually, the reason I asked that is I actually saw in my mind's eye you writing this book.
Mm-hmm.
At first, I thought it was just about that wood area that you talked about at the beginning. I forget the name of it, where you had your pirate experience.
Yes. When the Reiki master I met recently, she actually suggested that I write a book about it. But she suggested I write a children's book. Yeah.
No, not for children. This I can actually see it, and I can see that it will do very well actually as well, Denny. Mm-hmm. Possibly got a couple of books on you, but yeah, I can see that doing very well for you.
No. Good to know. All right, a little food for thought.
How exciting! So, what do you have coming up for you? I understand that you guys you're still in lockdown in the States, or is life?
Well, it was we were in lockdown, and then we're out of lockdown. Every state is different right now.
Right.
We're currently in what's called phase 3 here in Virginia, but I think we went back to phase 2 because there's been a spike in the virus cases.
Right.
We're very much getting hit with the second wave right now, and people are starting to kind of buckle down and go, okay, it's coming back around, and more people are getting sick and more people are dying, and it's kind of scary, because we don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly. It is pretty scary. We're very lucky here in New Zealand because we're so geographically isolated, way away from any other country in the world. The closest country is Australia, and of course then next is the Antarctic. So
sure.
We're very lucky. So where do you see yourself going from here?
I see myself eventually being in the paranormal field full time. Between podcasting and writing books and paranormal investigation, I just see myself full time doing what it is I love and that I feel like I'm meant to be doing, telling ghost stories.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
I can see you doing that as well. I mean, I can never see you not telling ghost stories in one form or another.
Sure. Yeah.
I can
absolutely.
See you, like it's this old grey gentleman, telling stories to the kiddies and to the grown-ups who listen to them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I remember one of my old storytelling mentors, she said to me once, you haven't told a story, Denny, until you've told it 50,000 times. And I said, there's probably something to that.
Yeah.
And I imagine as I get older and older and older, I'll find out the true meaning behind that.
Yeah. Well, and you never get tired of telling them either because they become part of your fabric of who you are.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that's really cool. Do you, before we end our conversation, do you have any other experience? What's the experience that stands out the most to you? It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be frightening. What stands out the most to you in all that you've experienced?
Um, as a whole, I would say I just had an experience not too long ago where I was told that I had spirit guides, and the person who told me, she said that I had several of them, and I said, "Oh, really?" And she said, "You've got one that I believe is either a grandfather or a great grandfather," and I just thought, "Oh gosh, it's my grandfather, my mom's dad, who passed away 2 days before my 13th birthday and appeared to me in the dream. He's he's back protecting me, keeping me on the right path, if you will." And I got my spirit box and I started trying to make contact, and I made contact with one of my spirit guides, and she told me her name was Anne, and I asked if my grandfather. I said his name, Robert Slaughter. I said, "Is he a spirit guide?" She said, "One of them." And I said, "Is he near?" She said, "Yes." And I asked, "Could I speak to him?" And she said that he was unable to speak, but he could hear me. And I said, "Okay, well, I'm not sure if he's actually there, so can I get some sort of confirmation, you know?" And she said, "Sure." And I said, "What did he call me when I was growing up as a child? Well, what was it that he called me?" And there was like a few seconds of just static, and I heard angel, and I started crying like right there on the spot, because that's what he called me all the time. And even though I was a boy, I was just like, I was like, "Papa, stop. Call a girl angel. Don't call me angel." It's like, what? It's just a sweet term of endearment. I mean, that's all it is. There's no harm in it. And I I told the spirit guardian, I said, "Tell him that I appreciate him being here, but he can go on. He doesn't have to be here anymore. If there's several of you around to help me on my way through life, that's great, but tell him he can rest." And it was just kind of a profound moment for me, because here I am again. I'm this 13-year-old boy saying goodbye to my grandfather in a dream, but now I'm here as a 33-year-old man telling him goodbye once more.
Oh, that's really sweet.
Yeah.
That's really sweet.
Yeah.
And our guides come and go. As we reach various stages of growth in our life, new ones will come in and old ones will leave. We usually have one main one that stays with us, but others come and go.
I can see that. I can see that.
Denny, it's been awesome having you on our episode today, and thank you so much for your time and your really interesting experiences that you've shared with us. I've really loved
it. Great. I was more than happy to share. Thank you for having me on.
I hope that you've enjoyed listening to Denny as much as I did. Some people are born storytellers and know how to keep your attention. Thank you so much, Denny, for sharing your most unique experiences with us all this episode. Our music today was called Strange Things by Jay Urban. It costs me a fair bit to produce this podcast, and I'm so very grateful to my patrons for their ongoing support. If you want to become a patron of the show, then head over to patreon.com/MCC15 and sign up now. As a patron, you get access to a special members-only page on the podcast website, www.walkingtheshadowlands.com, from which you can download full transcripts of each episode. You also have access to some interview bits that may not make the episodes, and little extras as I have time to create and add them for you. You also get early access to the shows before everyone else gets to hear them. Also, you have my absolute gratitude and appreciation. So, what are you waiting for? Go to patreon.com/MCC15 and sign up now. The continued support of my patrons makes it possible for me to financially cover part of the cost of producing this show for you all. So thank you so very much. If you have any suggestions for topics you might like me to cover in upcoming episodes, then please don't hesitate to contact me. Or if any of you have any questions, suggestions, or any comments that you'd like to make, or experiences that you might like to share with myself or my audience, or if you feel you might be a good fit as a guest on my podcast, then just email me at shadowlands@yahoo.com or check out the Be a Guest page on the podcast website. Check out our Facebook page, Walking the Shadowlands, our Instagram feed of the same name, and our Twitter feed at Shadowlands10. Like and follow for hints on our upcoming episodes. If you enjoyed this episode, then please leave a positive rating and don't be shy to leave a written review on your chosen podcasting platform or on the podcast Facebook page, Walking the Shadowlands. And of course, so you don't miss out on any episode, make sure you subscribe on your favourite podcasting platform. This podcast is available on all free podcasting platforms and iHeartRadio as well. If you have Alexa, simply say these 4 words, "Open Walking the Shadowlands," and Alexa will play our latest episode for you. If you don't have a smartphone, then you can listen to the episodes from the podcast website, www.walkingtheshadowlands.com. For those hearing impaired, there's a full written transcript of each episode on the website, so you don't miss out at all. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your workmates about our show. Encourage them to listen and to subscribe also. The more, the merrier. Thank you so much for listening today, tonight, whatever time it is, wherever you're living in this beautiful world of ours. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Thanks for listening.